Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And just to get out of the way, if we could silence the cell phones. My name is Muhammad. I'm the Executive Director here at the Jerusalem Fund and Palestine Center. And on behalf of our Board of Directors and staff, it's a pleasure to welcome you here, and it's a pleasure to welcome everybody watching online as well. And it's also a great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Jana El-Hassan, who will be speaking about her latest book called The 99th Floor. This book was shortlisted for the International Prize for Arabic Fiction in 2015, and The 99th Floor unfolds between the 1982 massacre at Sabra and Shatila in Lebanon and life in the city of New York in 2000. It follows the struggles and triumphs of Majed as he makes it in Manhattan at the turn of the century, after surviving the devastating 1982 massacre at the Sabra and Shatila refugee camp. A Palestinian born and raised in Lebanon, Majed creates a new life for himself in the glittery world of New York City's computer games industry. But with all the success, his past continues to haunt him. Majed also falls in love with Hilda, a dancer, whose wealthy family from Mount Lebanon thrived on the power of the Christian right wing during the Lebanese Civil War and were directly involved in the massacres at Sabra and Shatila. A multi-voice narration, the 99th Floor, conveys the brutality that war leaves on the people who experience it. It is also a love story that asks questions about the ability of passion to overcome hatred and difference. And copies of the book will be available for purchase after the event. So a little bit about Jana. She is an award-winning novelist, journalist, and translator from Lebanon. Her first novel, Forbidden Desires, won the Simon Hayek Award, and both her second novel, Me, She, and Other Women, and third novel, The 99th Floor, were shortlisted for the International Prize for Arabic Fiction. The 99th Floor is her first novel to be translated into English by Michelle Hartman and other languages. In 2015, Jana El-Hassan was included in BBC's 100 Women series, a 2-week season featuring inspiring women from around the world. Jana will speak for 30 to 40 minutes, after which we'll have a Q&A session. And for the people online, you can ask questions on Twitter, and you can tweet your questions to @Palestine Center. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Jana El-Hassan.
So, hi, my name is Jana El-Hassan. Thank you for having me here today. As Muhammad said, I'll be talking about my book. So basically, I'm a writer, I'm a novelist and journalist from Lebanon. I moved here around 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago. That's a bit before that's a bit after actually my book was out. So the 99th Floor shifts between New York and Lebanon. But I didn't used to live in the U.S. before I wrote this book. I haven't even seen New York before I came here. And so I'm going to start a little bit about how I started writing this book. As you all know, we have been involved in the Lebanese civil war in deep conflicts for over 15 years between the Lebanese and between the Lebanese among each other, and some of them were involved with the Palestinians too. So basically, I grew up in a small town in North Lebanon, and my conception about Palestinians was somehow distorted because every time we would talk about something like from the circle around me, I would hear a lot of people say that like blaming always the others for the Lebanese civil war, for the Lebanese internal conflict. So they would say like it's the war of strangers in our land. And basically, I grew up. I'm from the generation that didn't actually live the war. So, but we lived the aftermath of the war. So I grew up thinking somehow that yes, the Palestinians were somehow responsible for the war in Lebanon, and I didn't know a lot about them. So I remember when I used to go to the university, I used to go to the Lebanese university, so there would be some kind of segregation. It's like the Palestinians would be all by themselves, the Lebanese would be all by themselves, and there's this gap. Not only, I think, after I moved to Beirut and after I started working in journalism, after I started encountering people from other diverse backgrounds, that I started questioning a lot of things about the war, a lot of things about about the responsibility of the Lebanese people regarding the civil war, and also if the Palestinians had any role in that. So basically what I found out later was that the problem was actually among the Lebanese. Our problem was mainly blaming others for things that we couldn't take responsibility for, or for divisions that were first our responsibility. And I started looking at the issue from a very different perspective. I think the way I started actually going to Palestinian refugee camps inside Lebanon, and I saw a lot of the misery they lived in. I saw a lot of things regarding that. So that's why I wanted to write a story about our generation, the post-war generation, that actually lived in the aftermath of war. Even now in Lebanon, we still have that's what I always say, even though the civil war has ended, what happened was that we moved the warlords into political leaders, and this is something that we're still suffering of until this moment. So that's why basically I wrote this book. And then the reason why I chose New York to bring together the protagonist of the novel, Majed, who is a Palestinian who was hurt from Sabra and Shatila massacre, because that's where he lost his mother. She was killed by militants, and basically his father wanted to save him from he realized somehow that fighting in Lebanon was futile, so he moved him to the U.S. in order to give him a fresh start. So even this guy, he had this identity issue because basically he never lived in Palestine. He was born in the refugee camp in Lebanon, and then he moved to the U.S. But still, the Palestinian identity was something that he had to live with, and it was a struggle for him because I truly believe that when you are coming from a place where there's conflict, whether it's Palestine or any other place, and sometimes you don't know if you really want to be carrying this burden all of your life. And sometimes it's even, if you even question that, if you question why do you have to keep on burdening the identity burden, why do you have to keep on bearing the identity burden all your life, you're gonna kind of be judged by the society and even by your own self. You feel like you are abandoning some part of you which is inside of you already, and this is a problem for most Arabs. So I really wanted to question what is the meaning of home for a Palestinian who has never seen Palestine, and this is the case, I think, with hundreds and thousands of Palestinians who never even got the chance to see their homeland. And that's also Majed's father. He was always telling him that even his mother was killed in Sabra and Shatila. He was telling him, no, your mother is still alive. She's in Palestine. She is there, and she's waiting for us to return there. And that's part of it's not like the father wasn't really delusional, but he was he was symbolizing something. He wanted him to think that this is Palestine is your homeland. This is your mother, so even just don't give up on it. It's still alive, even if there's a lot going on there. So this is the way. So for him, but for Majed to realize that and to stay attached to a land that he was never in, it was kind of hard. So it's also about the future of the Palestinian cause or the Palestinian land, and how the generations that didn't live in Palestine, how do they see it? Will it really diminish? Like, will their attachment to their land diminish over time, or will they like really find a way to get back their land? So this is like also one of the main themes in the novel: lost identity, alienation, and displacement. And it is relevant now to our times, because I think there's still a lot going on in the Middle East. There's still a lot going on in other countries, in Iraq, in Syria, and this is somehow connected. The pressure this puts. So I'm talking about this pressure, the pressure this puts on Arabs' identity. This takes center stage in the novel. And also there's another topic which leads to this. So basically, Sabra and Shatila was a huge massacre. It was a huge tragedy for a lot of people, and it was one that still, like, until this day, it goes unpunished, like a lot of things that came from the war in Lebanon, because we never really had like real reconciliation or anything of the sort. We still have like also 17,000 missing people from the war in Lebanon, and we don't have the authorities doing something really to reveal the fate of these people. So these personal tragedies mark these people forever. So I think now, with everything that's going on in the world, we have a lot of tragedies, and we have a lot of crimes that are committed every day in the Arab world and that go unpunished. And this is something that I think I wanted to show in my book, and this is something that I actually started questioning a lot after I came here. I wanted to put the concept of justice versus democracy. I know that we are always, like, as Arabs, talking about democracy, about freedom of rights, and etc. But I think, like, the main thing that we are missing in our countries is actually justice. And this is like when you see immigrants coming here and then going back to their countries, I rarely ever hear someone say, oh my God, I'm free. I went to the West and I'm like, I was able to speak freely. I was able to gain the freedom of expression. That's not what people coming back from the West to the Middle East say. They say, like, basically, I was enjoying the rule of law, or there was some sort of order, or I felt like my rights were secured in a way or another there. So basically what troubles us most in the Middle East, or what's really, I think, in my view, the main problem is justice. And you cannot achieve justice unless, like, when you have a lot of, when you have such a heavy heritage, when you have violations of human rights every day, without even going, without anyone being held accountable for them. So basically, this is something that happened in Sabra and Shatila, for example. That's why I wanted to talk about this. So a lot of people and a lot of violations carried on during the Lebanese war, and no one really, the war ended, but what happened to all these violations? What happened to all these people who were wronged? Nothing. They got nothing. They just, even now, with a lot of of the things going on in the Middle East, basically, even maybe after the situation in Syria calms down, or even now with a lot of people who were damaged by ISIS in Iraq, for example. The other day I was reading a report from Human Rights Watch that the Yazidi girls who were taken into slavery by ISIS and stuff were just were compensated $1,700 by the Iraqi government. Is so what does $1,700 do when you've lost your life? And this is the case with a lot of people. So this is something that also that I questioned a lot while I was writing this book. The third thing was because the book is a love story between a Palestinian and a Christian woman whose parents were involved in the fighting. So basically, it's between two enemies, or so-called enemies. And basically, so the question also in the novel was, could love like survive between two people who have so many different things, or could love like provide really a solution to this thing, or is even love possible with such collective memories? This is why, like, Hilda, she meets Majed here, and she's she's also questioning her past. After she meets him, he is questioning his identity, but at the same time, like, even him, he feels somehow conflicted if he treats her like a lover or an enemy, or if it's like because somehow she provokes in him all the scars that he has lived in the war, and he provokes within her the question. So she decides to go back to Lebanon in order to just see if something has changed actually within her family, or if there is hope for any sort of change, or to seek answers for things, like, or to seek like really, I think she was seeking a kind of repentance. Like, she wanted to feel that the people who were responsible for the war, or the people who took part of the war in Lebanon, were actually like remorseful or regretted what they're doing. But unfortunately, that's not what she finds out, and that's why she comes back here. So this is basically what the book is about, and I'm just gonna read a little passage from it. Just gonna find. Okay, just a second. Okay, so this passage is in Lebanon, 1982, Sabra and Shatila camp. Mama, what's up? Daddy keeps saying we have to go to Auntie Zahra's house in Burj camp. He wants to tell you that it's going to be a hard night. Why won't he come and stay with us? How will he get to your Auntie Zahra's house? My mother wasn't even able to finish her questions before we could feel the shelling and bombardment that had begun to hit our area from all sides. She was heavily pregnant and she couldn't move easily. Part of her flowing striped dress was dragging behind her. She moved around the kitchen, washed the dishes, and dried them with a cheap towel frayed from the many times she had boiled it in the big aluminum pot she used to bleach clothes and towels. She heard the sound of gunfire erupting outside, shut the doors to the house tightly, and put her hand on her belly. She mumbled words I didn't understand, cursed war and the diaspora, and then went back to the kitchen to take out some potatoes and start peeling them. I couldn't understand her amazing ability to carry on with all the sounds reverberating outside, as if she were used to the idea of warfare, deliberately creating a space outside of it to allow her to keep on living. My heartbeat quickened, and I went in to pull her by the dress to leave the potatoes, stop moving, and recognized that things weren't going well. She turned toward me and said that we would wait until the situation calmed down a bit, and then we'd go to my Auntie Zahra's house. We heard loud knocking on the door, accompanied by my father shouting, telling us to open up quickly. She left the potatoes and the peels in the sink. Bits of dirt were still stuck to her hands. She wiped them on her dress, took out the keys, and then asked my father to calm down. May God destroy them. Now there's no time for prayers. As soon as the situation calms down, we'll go to the Bush camp. I left the guys and came straight to you now. Now you come. You've been far away for 5 days. Listen, woman, this isn't the time for reproaches. My father's anxious tone kept ringing in my ears. like I imagined it was when he was carrying me in his arms when I was injured in the leg by the bomb blast. I was wounded because I went out to bring some things my father had left in front of the house when he came unexpectedly, a suitcase and 2 bags. I didn't know what was in them. I don't know how it happened so fast. I saw blood pouring off me, including my face. I didn't know just then that Sharpel had hit me there as well. My father ran towards me. My mother screamed and started telling him to take me to the Gaza hospital. I was in his arms, and he rushed to give me medical help, my blood mixing with the sweat pouring off of his forehead before I totally lost conscious. The boy's going to die in our arms. Go, I'll take care of myself. How can I just go? How will you get out? Go, I'm telling you, just go. My father left. He carried me far from death, but he wasn't able to get back to my mother and the baby who hadn't yet seen the light of day. Flare bombs surrounded the Shatila refugee camp afterward, and the genocide started. Corpses were piled up on the ground, and my father couldn't go back. He couldn't penetrate the human rubble and save my mother. If only she'd left with us. If only she'd got into my Auntie Zahra's house first. If only she hadn't been pregnant. Perhaps then my father's face wouldn't have changed after the massacre, and he wouldn't have transformed from that militant hero into a broken man whom the war and its strategies had annihilated. Going backwards, September 16, 1982, at precisely 5 p.m., the massacre began. It's impossible to memorize this date as merely a number. Indeed, its images are almost constantly dying and being reborn. In an attempt to restore memory, events always seemed scattered and incomplete, for no reason but their sheer horror. In my head, the massacre is always linked to silence, except that my father escaped with me before the bombardment stopped, and the camp's toll was severe. The severity of a massacre isn't only about the destruction, but also the idea of remaining there, to a place reeking of the dead, a place shifting their voices, depriving them even of their death rattles, rejecting their having been killed. The peeled potatoes, the pots women had put on the stove, the laundry hanging on cloth line, the trash bags waiting for someone to take them out. All things that froze one day on that land, as did everything people didn't come back for. This tragedy, like all tragedies of war, didn't end after these events. Instead, it started there, with tales of buried body parts and corpses that hadn't been farewell to life on their sick beds with a smile, or we're used to seeing, or as we're used to seeing in films, but rather with panicked stares, with begging and pleading. The massacre I saw later in pictures and the accounts of some of the survivors made death for me transform into an image of a butcher, a knife, and eyes filled with fear. Even if I heard about someone passing away naturally from an illness, for example, I could only imagine a dead person like that, with knife or gunshot wounds. This image itself was enough to enrage me and make me forever hope to die asleep in my bed with closed eyes. So this is the passage where he's talking about the massacres when it all happened. And I don't know, I don't know. I would like to take some questions now if someone has any questions or something else you'd like me to talk about.
Thank you very much for coming here, especially today.
Thank you.
Because there was just an editorial in the New York Times this morning about the 70th anniversary of the Nakba, but there were 2 editorials, one about the 70th anniversary of the establishment of Israel, and a second one that talked about what can happen now to commemorate and the Nakba. My question is, Can you talk about the situation in terms of the Lebanese today and their relationship to Palestinians, and have things changed in terms of what you spoke of at the beginning, this idea of blame? Has that been reconciled in any way? What is the current situation in terms of the way Lebanese people think about the Palestinians individually and also Palestinian question?
Yeah, there's actually, like, if you want to talk about the Palestinian cause, a lot of Lebanese support the Palestinian cause, and this is well known. But if you want to talk, like, frankly, about the situation of Palestinian refugees in Lebanon, like, I don't know if you can actually support the cause of the Palestinians and then treat refugees in the way like the Lebanese treat them. So I think somehow the Palestinians are also partly seen as the way the Lebanese see the sectarian conflict between them. And I can't say that the situation for the Palestinians in Lebanon is actually good. It's actually like very bad, because the refugee camps where they lived are in very dire conditions, and they are not allowed to be part of the Lebanese society in terms of work rights, let's say, in terms of like the right to citizenship or something like that. So I think like you can still, but if you ask any Lebanese, he would boast about being pro-Palestine. But I think that what we need is actually like we need to be like pro something in actions. We don't need, and pro something in actions doesn't mean like fighting, but it means like integrating the Palestinians more into the Lebanese society, making them feel a bit like, and there was a movie this year that was nominated for the Oscars. I'm not sure if anyone of you saw it. It was Ziad Douairi's film. And he was also like talking about the same topic, bringing back, putting a Palestinian and the Lebanese in trial together, because like a Palestinian worker cursed some Lebanese, and then the Lebanese wanted to take him to court, and it's like it's far away from being just like a usual fight, because behind this like so-called small fight, there's a lot of layers about the past. And at the end of the movie, like they end up like somehow reconciled. And this is something that I wish it was this way, but I still think that the Lebanese society, the problem is not in the community, in the Palestinian community that we are hosting. The problem is in our country, in the host country itself, in the way that war is being dragged, even like now, years after it has been ended. I don't think it really ended. Even between the Lebanese themselves, you still see the same like kind of sectarianism that was there during the Lebanese war. So this is like actually, but that's not like, if you want to talk about support, a lot of people would say that we do support, of course, but I'm talking about the reality on the ground. Like how did you really integrate these people who came like as refugees to your country? Did you give them their rights? Did you give them the right to work, the right to for proper education, or did you just like leave them marginalized? So, yeah.
I have a question about how your book was received in Lebanon. I mean, what kind of reaction did people have to it, and just out of curiosity, where it's been mostly sold? Is it in Lebanon or other places?
Well, yeah, it is being sold. It was sold in Lebanon. It was also sold in Palestine and large parts of the Middle East. So basically, in Lebanon, it wasn't like it wasn't very well received, not by everyone, because we have a lot of still divisions. So the people who like what I'm talking about, or who share like somehow the same views, would like it, but the others. But there was also like a lot of people talking about the necessity to bring back, to talk about what really happened in war. And even on the Palestinian side, some people liked me, some people didn't like me, or thought that I was like, who am I to put myself in the shoes of Palestinian and talk about it? So it's like there's always different kind of reactions. I don't know precisely where mostly it's sold, but it's being sold in different Arab countries. Now it's being translated to German also. It was just translated to German, and it's going to be translated to French and Italian as well. So.
And then my other question was,
Yes.
are there many I know this was it's a fiction book.
Yeah, it's a fictional
But
story.
are there stories like this that you know of in real life where, you know, a Palestinian will meet, for example, like in this case, she's a Christian, and do you think it's going to happen more now with newer generations, this kind of mixing, or are people still very, very separated?
Yeah, I think like there's a they're not like, I think they're gonna still be somehow separated. I would like to say something else, but it's actually like, you know, for example, even now, if a Lebanese woman wants to marry a Palestinian, for example, there's still a problem because she can't give like the nationality to her husband or to her kids. So somehow she would feel, or the families would feel like, do you really want to be part of this? Or I think like there are people who work for these laws, like, but obviously we have now a foreign the foreign affairs minister is like, and the other day he was saying, yeah, we would support like giving the Lebanese women the nationality to their spouses and kids, but not if they're married to someone in the neighboring countries, which is like discrimination because it is talking about Syria and Palestine or something. And as I said, the idea is not about the Palestinians or something. It's part of the Lebanese sectarian conflict because they, you know, Lebanon is a very sectarian country. It's divided between Christians and they're always, so they fear for a change of so-called demography. They fear, like, for example, that the number of Sunnis would outweigh the number of Shias if they give the nationality to Palestinians, or the number of Muslims would outnumber the number of Christians. So if you look at it in depth, it's not actually about the others. It's about us. Like, it's our inability to just secure like a secular country, which is for everyone, which is like in which the Lebanese are identified as Lebanese, not just as Sunnis or Shias or Christians or something like that. And I don't mean to be pessimistic. I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I'm just sometimes, I'm not like, you know, I'm just too realistic sometimes. But I do think like we have a lot of people who are rallying for change. We have a lot of people who call for change. But I do think it's like, that's why I think it's very necessary in order to achieve real change, to look at the past mistakes and to just like look at them with the aim of reconciling with what happened and with starting a fresh start, different from what happened before.
I have 3 questions. One is, have you seen the film Tramontaine by Vachi Balgurian?
No.
Anyway, it's a very nice film, and the main character is a blind musician. The story is he was raised by a man who picked him up, I guess, when he was a baby during the war, and the man had been responsible for killing his family.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and he finds out because he has a fake ID. Anyway,
Yeah.
but it's a very nice story,
Yeah.
and it's about kind of.
He's Armenian?
Yes,
Yeah.
the filmmaker. Yeah. The question I had for you was, for your book, The 99th Floor, did you do any research? You know, some people. I'm not saying you should have, because you lived there. Maybe you already knew these stories. Sometimes
I did extensive research.
Yeah,
yes.
that's what I wondered.
Yeah.
And the other question I had is, because you work in media and you also are, you have this storytelling, you know, engagement. You're a novelist. Have you ever thought of writing a script for a film, in feature film, narrative filmmaking?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I did extensive research. I did a lot of research about the US, about New York and stuff like that. And I did a lot of research about the war. Because as I said, I didn't actually live the war. What I know about the war is what I heard from my parents, from the people, and we don't even have like in the history class at school, they don't teach us anything about the war. They just go back to the, to when the French were in the country, and it's like something very away from reality. Yeah, I did. I had to watch a lot of documentaries, and I had to read a lot of books, and I had to actually go, and I went to a lot of Palestinian refugee camps inside Lebanon, and I was talking to people. So yeah, I did have to do a lot of research. Your question about the media. Yeah, I actually studied, when I came here, I took 2 screenwriting courses in Georgetown, and I am writing a movie. I am writing a movie script. It's basically about Lebanon. It's not about... I was writing something about Beirut. I'm halfway there, and I'm still hoping to go on with it. Yeah, I think that the future, I think that the cinema or the movies can just somehow reach people more than books, unfortunately. But I think at the digital age we are in, yeah, I think that that's something I would like to do later.
I'm actually kind of curious to know what made you, I wouldn't say change your mind, but look at the bigger picture in terms of how the Lebanese perceive Palestinians, especially the refugees, because I know that a big portion of Lebanese believe to a certain extent that Palestinians are kind of responsible on some part of the civil war that happened there. So living in this environment and hearing all these things, what made you change your mind and then you started visiting refugee camps?
It's so basically, I don't know, I think somehow it's your ability to self-criticize, or when you're at a certain age, I wasn't really told, I wasn't brainwashed, but even when you wanted to ask someone about the war, for example, sometimes they wouldn't even give you a true account of what happened. For example, I had my uncle, he had a problem because of because of the Syrian presence in Lebanon. He had some kind of trauma, and never once could anyone from the family, even if you ask, could someone just come sit with you and tell you a complete story about what's wrong or about why this happened to him or something. They would just tell you bits and pieces, and it's kind of a kind of blame, that's the only thing, So I think because I was working as a journalist, and basically you are meeting a lot of people, you are just I moved also. I moved from North Lebanon to Beirut, and that's where actually you start reading more also. You start and I think I was curious, and I think I was I felt like I was somehow lied to, all my life, just who are these people who are governing Lebanon now? What are the crimes they have committed? Who are the people? So basically, it's just the people you meet. You meet a lot of people from different backgrounds. You read a lot. You just and my main concern wasn't with I wouldn't just of course I care for the Palestinians, but but it's I felt ashamed somehow to be part of a society that couldn't build a real state or a real country or something, and just instead of that blaming whatever foreign intervention for anything that's happening in their country. And this is something that carries on until now, so you wouldn't have someone just go and assume and say, we will try to make this better, we will try to bring the Lebanese together. Oh, this is because even now, if you see them on TVs, and it's that's all the time there are people blaming other people or people accusing other people, you know, and each side believes that he is right, or there's a lot of political division, and in this political division you cannot actually feel like if you want to belong to your country, you have to be part of this side or that other side, or just like, and I don't like any side, or I don't feel like that any side represents me, and then you'd be an outcast. So basically that's what makes you question your own society, and that's what makes you feel like all these sectarian divisions are just a way to keep the Lebanese people, you know, in conflict between each other, because actually if they weren't in conflict between each other, they would be more concerned about their economic rights, about their rights to employment, about their other rights, you know. So basically this is how you start to know that you want to know what really happened, or you just want to know what goes on beyond the politics, you know. And you have to see things from a humanitarian side. You don't have to see it even from a political side, because basically all the Lebanese killed each other. And even if there was some kind of intervention, now you have refugees in your country. Why are you putting them in camps, which are like 2 kilometers somehow, the whole, like, in such miserable conditions? It's just like, oh, they caused war to our country and that's it. And then you just go out and say, oh, I'm pro-Palestine and I hate Israel and I don't want Israel to be part of, you know what I mean? So it's like, and it's part of, on a wider scope, it's what's going on in all the Arab countries. So instead of like assuming, like taking responsibility for their nations, it's like making them stronger, they're just distracting people with the divisions. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the remarks. I mean,
Thank you.
my first question related to the introductory remarks, and when you talk about the identity issue,
Yes.
because it's one of the main issues, and that you may face it if you are, especially if you are a creative writer, because
yes.
people want to put you as their spokesperson more than you tell your story. And even like the question now asked before me, most of it going on, how do you feel about Palestinians and how Palestinians feel about Lebanese feel about Palestinians. So you think that, I'm sure that from my perspective it's a kind of burden, but how you see it, because at the end you are talking about those people. I mean, you don't have anything, you are not talking about Alaska people or people in Arizona. You are talking about the people who are like your neighborhood or your family, in the same time, like your uncle, but in the same time people pulling you down to tell you their story, because you are the one who went to Beirut, or you went to education, or you went to America to tell the story. How you try to make all these things together to say what you say or you want to write?
Or to reconcile with my own identity also.
Whatever.
Like, you know, I think that if you, of course, I do have an identity crisis. I think all of us do. And now, because I moved here like a couple of years ago, it's like it gets worse, you know. And even in terms of my relationship with Lebanon now, when I went back to visit in the summer, and then I came here, and I was like, now I don't want to go again, because I really don't want to go through all the questions that were in my head. But of course, I love my country. I love my country so much, and it's like, and I think that when you are criticizing something, or you are even questioning your identity, you're not doing that because you want to deny your identity, or because you just don't want to be part of this identity anymore, but you just want to create something that is more like you, that is more like, of course, when I talk about like, and this is something I also ask myself a lot of times regarding writing itself, do I want to turn like people I love sometimes, or even if I want to write about something personal, I'm sorry, do I have the right to turn people I love into like fictional characters? And this is something that torments me. I don't know. That's something I haven't done, and that's why I would like to write an account from something real that happened in my life, but that's something that I question But eventually, what I would say is that when you are criticizing your own community, it's not like you're not criticizing your own community because you hate your community. If you hate your community, you wouldn't care. You wouldn't even criticize something you don't care about. But when you are criticizing, it's also with the hope that you want this to be better, that you want this to be different. Like when I look at Lebanon, I see a lot of potential in the country, and I ask myself, like, why can't it be like any other country that has better infrastructure, better, like, why do we have to be tormented by war? Why do we have to be but then, as I said, when you are questioning your identity, that doesn't mean that you are trying to get away from your identity, but it's just like that you're hoping, because you are hurting, because we are hurting from what happened in the war. We hurt, like, it hurts me now that I have, like, the situation in my country pushed me to be an immigrant, okay? It hurt me a lot when I have, like, to talk to my family or to my sister on the phone, and then it's like you don't get to see the people you love growing up. So it's like this identity is a burden, but it's something that is like, it's not something that you actually don't care about. It's something that you care so much about that you are criticizing with the hope of change, with the hope of making the situation better. That's why you have to be very realistic. You don't have to go and just, like, say sugar-coated things in order, like, just to pretend that the situation is good. You have to say things as they are in order to hope that they would be better one day.
So my second question somehow related to this, but in a different perspective.
Yeah.
Because this is a podium usually used for political issues anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to say, because a lot of people will grow up that is this kind of generational question. You as a relatively coming in this part of the world, and let's say in this part of the time of the history, when you read those things were written by, whether it's like Palestinians like Mahmoud Darwish, Samih al-Qasim, and all these people,
Mm-hmm.
or let's say in Lebanon case, Gibran or Onsi al-Hajj
Yes.
or others,
Yeah.
all these people make you understand better your Lebanon and Palestine, or you feel that they were like living in a different world?
I think some of them were living in a different world, and I think and I think even as writers, sometimes you do take advantage of the political situation, and I think this is the case with a lot of writers. But I think, even, maybe at that time for them, sometimes things were more clear. You know what I mean? Like, they were on a certain side. But for us, it's like, when I do read, I do feel like I'm very interested also in the lives of these writers, how they live, not just in what they wrote, So I'm really interested in what life was like for them and what inspired them to write what they write. But of course, I do get a lot of, I enjoy reading a lot of their writings. But I think for them, for their generation, things were a bit more clear, and their pain was more clear. For us, I think it's it's a bit different, you know what I mean? It's it's a bit more complicated. So, especially that now we don't have a lot of political divisions. They're not as sharp. So for us, we have a lot of other questions. Yeah, you had a question. Yeah.
I really liked that you put a focus on justice.
Yes.
Just recently, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the death of Martin Luther King,
Yes.
Jr. And one of the big focuses of his life was on justice.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you expound a little bit about that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, he was a great character. So it's justice in everything, in every little thing in life, really. The other day, I was watching a talk on TEDx by someone. he was talking about justice, for example, in the work environment and how it makes people feel. He was talking that he went to work somewhere, for example, and everyone were invited to the party and he wasn't. And he said that this caused him to feel somehow some sort of injustice, and that this caused him to feel a bit detached from the workplace or something like that. But I think justice is the most important thing for people. And by justice, it doesn't always mean the law, because there are a lot of crimes that can be committed without having like any section in the law. For example, you can hurt someone by just saying a word, and you can do him wrong, and then he would like feel bitter about it for I don't know how long, but he wouldn't feel like there's something that you can do for him to just like give him the justice he needs. So I think like finding the right people to enforce a kind of justice, that's why the rule of law was made. But there's also something like I would like to say, like, for example, I just remember that, when I was a bit younger, I remember a friend of my family told me, like, if you're gonna go in your life just clinging or seeking every right you have, you're gonna live like a very tiring life, because you're not gonna get everything you deserve, or you're not gonna get everything the right way. So it's like, I think at least the basic kind of justice, and justice starts from confrontation. Sometimes like you can do someone justice by just apologizing to him. You know what I mean? So I don't mean like by justice, I don't mean revenge at all, because this is like something that we suffer in the Arab world, the tribal communities. But by justice, I mean like the humanitarian part of justice.
Jana,
Yeah.
all right, you mentioned the most critical and two issues in Middle East, which is loss of identity and an absence of justice. My question is, how much the religion has to play a role with both those two issues?
with the loss
Middle
of,
East.
with justice and identity, it has a major role to play. But I think that if we didn't have like a role played by religion, we would have invented something else. I always ask myself the question, like, is it because of religion that we have these sectarian divisions, or is it because the human nature needs somehow of divisions? I think if we didn't have religion's conflict, we would have created something else. But of course, I do think it has a major role to play in it. But it's like also how you exploit religion, because religion without the spiritual part of it, it's gonna take you to inhuman place. But if you bank on the spiritual side of religion, for example, you may live peacefully, and you may actually just benefit from it. You never know. Yeah.
Just a quick one. Why is it called the 99th floor?
Because that's where his office is. He works like, and it's like kind of an allegory, because like, so it's basically he's on the 99th floor in the U.S., one of the most powerful countries in the world, and then it's like the Palestinian camp is, so it also has a question about the power in the U.S. in the book. So I'm not going to say anything because I want you to read it. Yes. Yeah, base.
Any more questions? All right. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you
a
so much
wonderful
for having me.
presentation.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.